Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 7 books that I've read and the 1 book that I DNF'd in the month of July. The final books of the month of July are actually for a project in August. So let me know if you can guess what the project is. It's nothing major, but it's just a quick gimmick. The first book that I read in the month of July was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I had previously read The Maidens by him, and I gave it 4 stars, 4 or 5. I really enjoyed it. It was a dark academia thriller. And this one is also a thriller, but it's a very much domestic thriller. And I gave it overall 3.75 stars. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't out of this world. The things that I enjoyed the most were comparing and contrasting how some themes showed up here and also on The Maidens. For example, power of relations and the power of therapy overall, Greek myths as well. This author is from Cyprus, a country that I've been to before and that I love so much. So I can see how the Greek myths impacted his writing. But still, overall, I think these subjects were handled much better in The Maidens than here. In The Maidens, they felt important themes for the message of the book and for the overall story. Here it felt like plot points. This book follows Theo Faber. He's a criminal psychotherapist, and his objective is to fix this patient at the Grove. Her name is Alicia Berenson, and she killed her husband Gabriel with 5 shots to the face, and then she never spoke a word again. I found the twist to be entertaining and it caught me off guard, so that's always fun in a thriller. But overall, the concept on why these characters were there, their motivations, it all felt a bit too convoluted for me still. So that's why I gave it only 3.75 stars. The next book that I read was Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. I had previously started this book in December last year, but I was on holiday, so it didn't happen. I picked it back up again, even though it's a holiday book, because it's winter, and it's a very wintry book, that's for sure. This is a fake dating / marriage of convenience rom-com. Ellie is struggling in life overall. She had everything a year ago. She had her perfect dream job in animation. She had this meet cute with this gorgeous woman named Jack at a bookstore, but then things went downhill really quickly. The morning after she met Jack, her wife came to her house and Ellie was completely heartbroken. She then lost her job in animation and had to make ends meet working at a coffee shop, and now her rent is increasing and she just got denied a promotion at the coffee shop that would allow her to pay her rent. She badmouthed her workplace in front of Andrew, the place's landlord, and she cried in the bathroom and pleaded for a promotion and got rejected twice. So it's all very embarrassing, and Andrew offers to drive her home and they end up at a bar and they drink away their feelings. Andrew is also not having a great time. His grandfather passed away, and for him to get the inheritance money, he needs to be married, and he's so far away from that. He doesn't even have a relationship at the moment. So drunkenly, they make a napkin contract that Ellie will fake marry Andrew for $200,000 from his inheritance, and the only thing she has to do is go spend Christmas with him and his family in the mountains. Of course, when she arrives there, his sister, Jacqueline, is her Jack from last Christmas. And of course, chaos ensues. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. Ellie is a very relatable character. I found the romance to be deliciously steamy, but not very spicy, which is just the way I like it. The emotional connection between the characters was really brilliant. And the depth and trauma bonding these people go through is insane. I love this aspect of the melodramatic in an angsty romance. I love angsty romance. Angst is my life. I love it. So I really enjoy this. This is not a rom-com. It is comedic in the way that it is awkward. But yeah, The Christmas vibe was also very enjoyable. It's very Christmassy, but it's very wintry Christmas. So I don't think it would have fit well for my read last Christmas because our Christmas is during the summer. But it was a well-picked read for winter time. The next book that I read, or in fact didn't read, is YN by Esther Ye. I DNF'd this book at 52%. Again, like Idol Burning last month, this is a book that talks about K-pop fandom. YN is a novel about this Korean-American narrator. She is unnamed, and she lives in Berlin, and she's obsessed with Moon, this K-pop idol. This obsession grows to such an extent that she goes to Seoul in search for him. In the midst of these real-life chapters, we read from a fanfiction that this narrator is writing, hence YN in the name. And in this fanfiction, Moon is not a K-pop star, which I found interesting. Not usually, but I would think that part of the appeal of loving an entertainer is the WAG culture of it all. And this narrator doesn't have that. She feels like she knows Moon in a deeper level, and the Moon in her fanfiction is not a K-pop artist. I DNF'd because I felt like it had no commentary at all. The entire book was hidden behind these hard, difficult words and metaphors that had no meaning. One of the reviews on Goodreads says, biblically accurate representation of a fanfiction reader with a thesaurus at disposition. And that's exactly how I feel. She used big words to pretend like the conversation that she was bringing up was deep and meaningful, but in fact, it was very far from that. I feel very disappointed in the books that I've been reading about K-pop fandom, and maybe I'll take a break because those two are the ones that I saw a lot on the internet, and maybe I'll research more afterwards. But yeah, overall, I don't think this theme is for me. I want something more real instead of something so romanticized and lyrical. Next, I read Pequena Coreografia do Adeus by Aline Bay. I gave this 4 stars. This is a literary fiction novel that follows Julia. She is the daughter of separated parents, and she's struggling living with these 2 parents. Her mother is very abusive, physically abusive, and she doesn't care much for her own daughter or their household. And apart from being a man and being interested in other women, this is one of the reasons why Julia's father leaves them. So she's living half the time with her mom and half the time with her dad, and at the same time half loving them and half hating them and resenting them. The book follows her entire life. Part 1 is her childhood, and part 2 her adolescence, and part 3 her adulthood. The part that I loved the most was her childhood. Julia is a character that has always been a writer. That's one of her dreams and something that she gets to do at part 3. But because she's a writer, even her childish thoughts are very poetic and beautiful to read. I listened to this audiobook, which is narrated by the author, and I highly recommend that. The author is also a poet, so you can see how her word choice is very particular. I think that her narration takes the tone of the novel to a whole new level. I am also really surprised at how beautiful the writing is, considering how plain it is. It is very straightforward, plain, simple, modest, and still it packs a punch, and you can see how this contrasts with the last book that I DNF'd. You don't need fancy words, you don't need a thesaurus at hand to make beautiful, meaningful writing. And I also enjoyed part 3 because it is the part that Julia has to live with the consequences of her parents aging and dying and getting sick. And it is very interesting part because you have grown attached to this character so far, and you can see how these parents have impacted her. And now you can see her deal with this trauma and also start to live her life as an author, something that she has always dreamed of. I think this book is really beautiful and I would highly recommend it. The next book that I read was Swift and Saddled, which is the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage. I gave this 5 stars. I have the first book here. I love this series. This book in particular follows Wes Ryder. He's the middle child in the Ryder family, and he's not going to inherit the ranch, that's Gus. He's also not a great superstar, that's Amy, the barrel racing superstar. But at the end of the first book, both Amos and Gus, his father and his older brother, have allowed him to turn one of the old houses in the ranch into a B&B sort of hotel situation. Thanks to Teddy, Amy's best friend, he hires Ada Hart to come and do the renovation. When Ada arrives in Meadowlark, she's clearly running away from her life. She has a failed marriage, she has a failed college program, and she's using this project as a way to get away from everything. And she arrives at the dive bar owned by Luke from the first book, and she kisses the stranger, and it's very magical, but she then runs away like she's used to. Little does she know, the next day she goes to meet her new boss, and that's him. The guy she kissed at the bar is Wes, her boss. Ada pretends like nothing happened. She says that the kiss was nothing, it meant nothing, and then you see how she slowly releases this tension and brings down her walls for Wes and for Meadowlark and for the family that she creates in this place. I love this book a lot. I love this series a lot. I think Lila Sage's writing is spectacular. She manages to make me feel comforted and seen and loved and warm. The family she has built in these pages feel like my own family, with their problems and their immeasurable love for each other. And seeing glimpses of Amy and Luke from the first book, seeing them together, hearing more about Amos's backstory, how his life and his family he had to build from the ground up, seeing Ada tear down her walls for Wes, to let herself be loved and wanted was amazing. I feel like Lila manages to create a perfect mix of smutty and spicy scenes with very heartwarming, loving, romantic scenes, and also very angsty and hurtful heartbreak scenes. Like, she has the perfect mix of all of the things I love in romance. The conflicts feel realistic and hurtful and heartfelt at the same time. I'm really, really excited about the 2 books that we have going on in the series, and I'm really excited about her career as an author in general. I think she has many great things ahead of her, and I feel very lucky to have read these books and to have been a part of the publication of it in Brazil, which will happen at the end of August. More about that in the future. But yeah, I love this book. 5 stars, one of my favorites. I'm really surprised at how much I loved Wes, considering he was not one of my favorite side characters from the first book by a mile. But Lila managed to create such a great guy. Yeah, and I loved their relationship. I loved seeing Rebel Blue. I love that. The next book that I read was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I gave this book 5 stars. I think this might be one of my favorite books of the year. This book follows Cyrus Sham. His mother passed away when the plane that she was on was shot down from the sky in Tehran by the American government, and his father moved himself and Cyrus as a baby to America to work at a chicken farm in Middle America, and that's where Cyrus was raised. Father passed away recently from a heart attack, and Cyrus is struggling with living. He's struggling with the meaning of life. Why is he here? And he's a drunk, an addict, and a poet, and he's starting to spiral in this obsession with the concept of martyrs. This is how he discovers this artist in Brooklyn that is dying from breast cancer and is putting on her final performance. Her art piece is called Death Speak, and she is talking to everyone that comes by. She's sitting in a room at the Brooklyn Museum, and she is talking in intervals with everyone in the line about death and about anything that they want. And Cyrus sees this as another character in this martyr book that he wants to write, and he goes to Brooklyn to meet and talk to her. Overall, this book is incredible. It was one of the most anticipated books in every single list I've read at the beginning of the year, and it's for good reason. This book made me cry, it made me think, it made me feel seen, and it made me feel disgusted. It's such a difficult reading experience of relating so much to Cyrus and his experience and his thoughts. And it's told in such a layered and careful and funny way. You have chapters from his point of view, from the points of view of his father, his mother, his uncle, the artist, Orchide, who is doing the performance. You have chapters that are from Cyrus's dreams. You have excerpts of the book, the Martyr book that Cyrus is writing. Even in the midst of chapters, you have vignettes from different parts and different scenes in the lives that contextualize what is happening within the chapter. I loved this writing. For a book that is so applauded for its writing. I was waiting for something difficult. As per usual, I think a lot of the applauded writing that I see online comes from this difficult place, this place that makes reading inaccessible. And Akbar doesn't do that. On the contrary, his writing is very simple. It reads normally. It reads like a general fiction novel, even though it deals with so many hard themes and so many difficult experiences. The characters are incredibly vivid from page 1, which is so incredible to read. Like, there are scenes that you read from, for example, from Cyrus's father point of view, and while reading that scene, even though it's from Cyrus's father's point of view, I can see exactly, clear in my mind, how Cyrus would react to that thing happening to him. That is crazy. This book opens up a lot of philosophical conversations at the same time that it has a big plot. I feel like this is my biggest difficulty with reading literary fiction. I feel like literary fiction is all up here and nothing like in the real world. And this book made these two things marry each other in such a beautiful way. You have these philosophical conversations about the meaning of life, about martyrs, about death, about the meaning of death, in the midst of this normal plot. This guy in New York, he has a relationship, he has struggles, I found there's movement on the page at the same time that there is a lot of introspection. I have a bunch of quotes that I love a lot. I made a list of all the scenes that I loved the most. Like, one of the scenes, I think it's my favorite scene of the entire book. It happens on chapter 2. I had to stop reading this book to cry for like 40 minutes after I read this scene. And that shows you how this book packs such a punch from first page. There are many conversations as well on colonialism, and on being American Iranian. He was born in Iran, but he's not. He is American. He's so American. And the conversations on that, on if he can feel the pain of Iranians, even though he's so American at the same time. I feel like this book opens up a lot of thoughts in my brain, and I had a blast reading it, and I had a blast dissecting it and typing down my notes. And I feel like I'm gonna carry this book until the end of the year, at least, if not for life. Sadly, the next book that I read was a 1-star. For a reading month that had 2 5-stars, I feel like it was only time. This is Love Just In by Natalie Murray. This book follows 2 characters. It is a romance. It follows Josie and Zach. Josie is a TV reporter from Sydney. She had a panic attack on screen, and her boss has shipped her off to Newcastle to cover someone else. She's not worried about moving to Newcastle because her best friend from high school, Zach, lives there. He had a traumatic experience in Sydney. His fiance passed away in a car accident that he was present in as well. And he moved to Newcastle and cut ties with everyone, basically, which also means he cut ties with Josie. So she's excited about moving to Newcastle because she gets to see and live and be near Zach again for the first time in 2 years. but at the same time, she's worried because their friendship is not the same. The start of this book was very promising to me. The awkwardness of them meeting again, you know, that Zach had feelings for Josie when they were teenagers, but at the same time, Zach had a life, you know, he had a fiance. Josie doesn't have much romantic interest in her life at the moment. The beginning is very interesting. I thought the premise was fun. I like a second chance romance. I wanted to read something set in Australia as well, but the thing that hurt me the most is that this author managed to create such a real, interesting, humanly character in Zach, at the same time that she created such a terrible person in Josie. I never, in any point of the book, I rooted for Josie and Zach to get together. My review is that Josie was a terrible friend to Zach the entire way through. She blamed him for his grief response after losing his fiance. She is angry and jealous that he managed to turn his life around, that he has new hobbies, that he has a new girlfriend, that he went back to his paramedic job after losing his fiance. She makes the traumatic event of that accident that almost cost his life be about her every chance that she gets. She doesn't respect his boundaries. She has always been unable to see him as a human being and not only her best friend. And I cannot, in good conscience, root for them to get together. One of the things that I wrote, and I think this is a spoiler, but at this point I don't care because I don't like this book and I would never recommend it. It says that I cannot in good conscience root for a character that willingly gets into a car with a drunk driver twice to end up with her best friend of 14 years who she saw lose his fiance and almost lose his own life to a drunk driver. That is inexcusable. And I think the writer tries to play that like it's nothing. I really literally don't get. I feel like this book was written by two different people. There is no way this author created Zach and created such a beautiful life story for him. Being in love with his best friend that never liked him back, that rejected him at every chance she got, that's Josie, that rejected him with fervor, like with disgust. She felt disgusted by the thought of kissing him at a Halloween party. And you see him meet Tara for the first time and fall in love with her and start to create a life with her. And then you see him lose everything in this car accident. And you see him pick up the pieces 2 years later in Newcastle, where he has friends, where he has a girlfriend, where he has hobbies, where he surfs, he enjoys life. He's a paramedic. He still helps other people even though he lived with this traumatic accident. It's so hard for me to understand how this character, full human character, was created by the same author that could not give him a happy ending because she needed to give Josie a happy ending. And their happy endings are not the same. The only happy ending for Zach is to not be with Josie, and the only happy ending for Josie is to be with Zach. Like, until the end of the book, I was really hoping that something would happen that would turn this story around, because there's no way this book has a 3.82 average on Goodreads. Like, something has to happen for this book to turn around, and it didn't. So I would not recommend this book. Stay clear from it unless you want to hate read something. And then the last book that I read, I finished it yesterday, was At First Bite, which is the first book in the Harlot Space series by Olivia Dade. I gave this 4 stars. This is such a swoony romance. This book starts with Athena Graydon's engagement to Johnny. This is her engagement party. Unfortunately, it's during the holiday season because she's a teacher, so her friends can come and her parents are away on a cardiology conference, but they're paying for the engagement party. This engagement is a complete whirlwind. They met 2 months ago. They were long distance because she lives in Virginia and he lives in Maryland. And yeah, she doesn't know many people there, even though it's her engagement party. She meets this guy, and Athena, mind you, Athena is obsessed with Googling things, obsessed with learning different things and fun facts and stuff like that. And she meets this guy and she makes an offhand comment about the food that they're eating. Something like, oh, did Romans have potatoes? And he's like, oh, let's search on Google. And he plays along with her, and it's a very interesting first meet. And of course, that guy is her fiance's older brother, who has rejected and complained about this engagement since the start. He hadn't even met Athena before they got engaged. He thinks that she is irresponsible, moving from job to job every 3 years, that her parents are the ones that supported her financially this whole time. She's 36, she should be able to stand on her own 2 feet. So even after they have this spark meeting, he's still adamant that Johnny and Athena should not get engaged. Then the book jumps 8 months into the future, and of course Johnny had broken off the engagement. But unfortunately, Athena is moving into Harlot's Bay. She is moving into something called the Spite House. Basically, the lore is that these 2 brothers owned this plot of land, and when one of the brothers went to war, the other built a house. But he took up the majority of the plot of land. So when his brother came back from the war, he built a house out of spite in the tiny little bit of land that was left. And that cut off some of the airflow circulation in the main house and also the light. So that's called the Spite House. The Spite House is right next to Johnny's house. And Athena had bought the Spite House for Johnny as a marriage gift. She used all of her savings for that. And she unfortunately cannot sell the Spite House because she quit her life to move in and marry Johnny. She quit her job as a teacher. She sold her condo and all of the furniture. She even gave back the engagement ring that she could have sold and gained some money. She even gave it back to Johnny. So she has nothing apart from this house that she bought as a marriage present to this guy that is no longer going to be her husband. So she moves there. The moment that she moves in, Matthew is there to help her carry the boxes inside, even though it's raining and he's afraid of thunderstorms. And he is living next door. So right next to the 2 houses that are tied together, like they share a wall, there's this 4 feet alleyway, and then there is Matthew's house. So she is stuck in a sandwich of the Ryan brothers, her ex-fiance and her ex-fiance's older brother, who got the engagement called off. The thing that I loved the most is how the author managed to repair this broken relationship. I think that was the part of the book that made me like it the most. It reminded me a lot of Pride and Prejudice. They both had incredible prejudices against each other. They thought things about each other based on nothing. They knew nothing of each other, but they had these preconceived ideas and notions of each other. Matthew had to see for his own eyes the havoc that he created in Athena's life by getting the engagement called off. He feels very guilty. He pays for part of her mortgage. He tries to find her a job. And Athena, on the other hand, feels Matthew's judgment the hardest because she truly believes that that's the truth about her. That she really did go to 2 master's programs on her parents' money and did nothing with them, that she jumps from job to job, that she is irresponsible. Yeah, it was a really sweet time. It was a bit melodramatic. Like I said, I love an angsty romance, so this is something that I enjoy, but I feel like if you like something more of a rom-com, you're not gonna enjoy this. Very melodramatic, but you see them realize things about themselves and about each other. At first, Matthew is so guilt-ridden that they become somewhat friends. But then one day they have a fight and Athena asks if now that Matthew knows her, he would still be against the wedding. And he says yes. And that's when the things that are in the synopsis start to happen. Athena dials up the spite in the Spite House and she tries to create havoc in Matthew's life in return. The only thing that makes this book a 4-star instead of a 5-star is that I feel like for the buildup of this relationship that was created, I don't feel like the resolution and their scenes as a couple made me swoon as much. I don't know, I love the buildup of a relationship. I love people getting to know each other. That's my favorite part of romance. So I always expect that, but I loved so much the writing and the buildup and the teasing and the banter and everything that I was expecting more from their scenes as a couple. But yeah, that was the final book that I read in the month of July. The final 4 books of the month of July are for my August project, so let me know what you think it is. And I'll see you guys next month. Okay, bye.